Serious, late night hikers, what is the creepiest thing you have seen while hiking? Not hiking so much as car camping, but we were way out there in the middle of nowhere on BLM land in Colorado. We drove for an hour and a half down a Forest Service road and didn't see another soul. You could see headlights and hear cars from miles away from our campsite. It's not like somebody could have snuck up unnoticed. We had 3 cars with us and 8 people. Just got done eating dinner, cleaned up. It was getting dark, so we went back to the cars real quick before hitting our tents for the night. Somebody had slashed the front right tire on each of the 3 cars with what appeared to be a box cutter. Everyone thought it was a prank, but it became very apparent very quickly that it wasn't. All of us were beyond spooked, like panicking. Scary to watch spooked. We all had spares, and one dude had a gun, so we threw on our donuts while that guy literally guarded us and got the hell out of there. I still have nightmares about it sometimes. Just knowing there was some person probably watching us, maybe wanting to harm us, makes me feel physically ill to this day. I go out for walks very late at night fairly often, so I've seen a few things. The creepiest though happened about 2 months ago. I left the house around 1:30 am, and it started off as a normal walk. I wandered around the town till about 2 am. When I decided to go home, I was walking back the route I had came when I noticed a black van meander down the street. Didn't really pay too much attention to it though. At first, I did pay attention though when I saw it slowly drive by me for a second time. I wasn't entirely sure it was the same van though, so I just continued walking. But this time I kept an eye out, and lo and behold, about 10 minutes later, the same darn black van came down the street again. This time I knew for sure because it didn't have license plates. Now I was fairly scared, so I picked my pace up a little bit. When the van came around again this time, it stopped in the middle of the road a few houses in front of me. I stopped, turned around, and booked it back in the other direction. I made a few turns onto different roads, and then ran right into someone's yard. I waited behind their fence, and the same van came down the street. Assume that when they couldn't find me, they finally decided to leave, but I waited in that yard for about 20 minutes before I ran back to my house and practically threw myself through my bedroom window. It was in the summer around dusk and I was camping at a remote campground with my dad. There was a lake right next to the grounds and my dad and I would trailblaze through the forest right next to the lake because if you went far enough there was a really pretty waterfall. A few strange things happened on this hike. We found a slash pile that had a little kid's shoe on top. When we came to a small clearing, my dad had to take a leak, so he faced one side of the clearing and I faced the other, and we both clearly heard a child say, "I'm over here." My dad thought it was me, and when he realized it wasn't, we spent half an hour looking for someone, but we found nobody. After that, we gave up on going to the waterfall and started to make our way back to camp. There were clear sounds of something following us, twigs snapping, bushes shaking. We haven't been camping there since. I go hiking in the woods that permeate my town, sometimes so late that I get to see the sunrise out there. The strangest thing I ever saw was what I could only describe as a shanty town was built up seemingly overnight deep into the woods. Simple little hovels made of scrap metal and bedsheets and a small fire pit that someone had made out of an old tire, with the fire still burning. But that wasn't the weird part. The weird part was that this was well past midnight when I found this place and it was quiet as a grave. There was no one there. Someone made the trouble of getting a fire going and then left it. From the look of it, this place could hold about a dozen or so people, and yet there was nothing there but the fire they abandoned and whatever possessions they had left in the shanties. Someone was there. They just didn't want you to find them. They all had to pee. Mystery solved. While it did not happen during the hike, rather the camping, it was still the creepiest thing I've experienced out there. Was working at a summer camp for kids and we went on an overnight outing. Had a cougar circle our camp from around 11 PM to roughly 5 AM. It was crying out, hoping one of us would separate from the group. I stayed up all night with bear spray and a hatchet, keeping an eye on it with the other staff. It was around midnight in a clearing for picnics in a large park that lots of people hike through. Pitch black, no one around. I was with my boyfriend at the time. We got pretty frisky at one of the picnic tables, and I'm facing a river which is sort of illuminated from the moonlight. He's facing the solid black tree line, We're trying to have a good time and he becomes completely still and in a low voice says there's a man coming towards us. I turn my head, see only a white t-shirt approaching us at a brisk walking pace from the trees, and that's all I needed to see. I ran, knowing my BF would catch up. He did. I was never down for midnight forest stuff again. Haha. I drove to a park to go hiking at night in the mountains. So safe I know, and I hadn't even turned off my car and I already feel like I'm being watched. There weren't any cars around so I thought maybe it was just me being paranoid for some reason. But for some reason I look to my right and I see this weird looking humanoid shape on top of the little bump hill about 50 feet away. At first I thought it was a weirdly shaped tree until I saw the arms move. No wind at all. So now I know there's a person staring at my car trying not to move, for what I assume is for me to get out of my car and leave to a more secluded area as we were next to the road. Of course I left. I don't go hiking at night in that particular park anymore. Was camping with a few buddies once pretty far out in a sort of sand dune type terrain in Australia. The plan was to just hike to a good spot we knew well and get drunk. We got to the spot and pitched tents and were chilling. Our spot is on top of a really high dune because the view from the top was just mesmerizing with the ocean and wilderness. Anyways, we just got the campfire started and out of nowhere this geek just comes flying over the lip of this hill right next to us and almost crushes a few friends of mine and one of the tents. Like I said, this sand dune is really high up so I have no idea how they managed to get up it at the speed they did. They slammed the brakes and no one can get a look at them as the windows were tinted and sped off over the dunes. That was more chaotic and random, but the creepy part was about an hour later I went off to do a piss in a bush nearby and was looking down the hill and just saw a figure staring up at me. Friend of mine came behind me to piss in a bush next to me and scared a shit out of me. When I pointed the figure out to my mate it just took off over a lip of a hill. Definitely a night I won't forget and I don't think I've returned to that spot since. This occurred around 3 years ago and about 2 months ago human remains were found right next to our spot. Scary sh goes on in those dunes, I tell you. This wasn't on a hike, but it's a bit similar. Back in our old place, one night my girlfriend and I were walking our dogs around the neighborhood. She's a lot smaller, so I was walking 2 of the dogs and she was walking one, who was a former service dog. He was a real gentle dog, albeit a bit older. Other than snatching the ball away from the others during fetch, he'd never shown a bit of aggression. I walk a bit ahead of my girlfriend because of the 2 dogs pulling pretty hard on me, but not too far, maybe 10 or 15 feet ahead, but around a corner. As I found out later, she'd slowed down in part because she noticed someone nearby acting strangely, scoping out a house I think. When he spotted her, he said hi and she responded in kind, asked how he was. Before he could answer, the dog she was walking started to growl and she apologized, commenting that he was a guard dog. The guy looked at her and said, "Well, he's doing a good job tonight." She was pretty spooked and hurried to catch up to me. We were more careful on nighttime walks from then on. OMG, that's scary and reminds me of something similar that happened to me. I was alone though and jogging through the neighborhood when I stopped to take a breather. To the right of me was a neighbor's driveway and a guy crouching next to the driver's side of the neighbor's car. We stared at each other for a minute and I said, "Hi." He greeted me back and seemed really awkward. It wasn't until later that I realized he was probably trying to break into the neighbor's car. I was out taking my dog on a short walk and to go to the bathroom. She was a rescue and was at this point terrified of everything, so getting her outside was always a task. It was 4 AM and she was whining at me. I figured she needed to go to the bathroom so I put on some shoes and took her outside. It was a warm night as it was July in Missouri. I'm walking down the street from my apartment complex and I see a figure standing under a street light, not moving. Thinking it was just a guy out for an early morning run, I kept walking. That's when this figure started to move towards me in a weird fashion. He wasn't jogging, wasn't walking, it looked like skipping. Thinking to myself, what the F? I stopped walking. That's when my dog started growling from behind my legs. I'd had her almost 6 months and had never heard her growl or bark. I turned around and walked back into my complex. I looked over my shoulder and this dude is standing at the entrance to my apartment complex, head to toe in black clothing. grinning from ear to ear. I was fully in what the F is this bullshit mode and walked back into the complex further while checking to make sure Smiles wasn't following me. I started to walk towards my entrance and he turned and slipped away into the night. I went and talked to my landlord the next day and she told me they'd had multiple reports of this guy skipping around the complex late at night, but whenever the cops showed up he was gone. Years ago some friends and I were going to have a campfire at a lake late at night with copious amounts of alcohol. When we got there, we had to drive around a barricade and one of the cars got stuck in the mud. While trying to get it unstuck, I looked around and made a joke about how we were definitely in the beginning of a horror movie. All laugh about it. We get the car out and continue to the lake. Get all set up. Fire is going. Music is playing. Drinks are flowing. We are having a great time. All of a sudden some random effing guy comes walking out of the woods with a beer. I get nervous. Everyone else tells me I'm being paranoid since I watch a lot of scary movies. They invite him to join us. He ends up sitting next to me. But a few feet away, I go to grab another beer from the cooler, see the hatchet that someone brought and I decide I'm going to hold on to it. I sit back down and this random guy makes some comment about he can see my jugular and wants to bite it. I'm ready to piece TF out, but I of course didn't drive. A little while later he makes a comment about he should have brought his chainsaw. I'm completely alone in thinking this is going to end badly. I move across the fire and closer to the cooler and one of my friends. I set the hatchet next to me. Try to ignore the guy and enjoy my night. Fast forward a bit and the guy is making more weird comments, so I reach for the hatchet. It's gone. I start glancing around, discreetly at first, when the guy smiles at me from across the fire and goes looking for this and holds up the hatchet. I said F all of this. I'm leaving and managed to get one of my friends to leave. The next day everyone said that nothing more happened, but as someone who has seen a lot of movies, I wasn't taking any chances. I walk at night in my rural area regularly. I've encountered black bears, coyotes, bobcats, angry deer, and everything on down, with no real concern. But the creepiest encounter was a little black pickup truck with rainbow and unicorn stickers, bubblegum pop music blaring, and it smelled like cotton candy when it passed me. First time it passed me it swerved to hit me. I jumped out of the way easily. I thought nothing of it really, just figured they were startled by seeing me at night with my reflective gear. The truck circled back and comes at me again. I saw it coming this time and grabbed my dog up just in time to jump into a ditch. Her little girl laughter, high-pitched and maniacal. The tiny truck circled back for a third go at me, but by then I was hiding in my neighbor's shrubbery. I watched it slowly drive down the road, hearing giggling as it passed me. Fortunately it kept on going and I made it home just fine.